You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Well, all right. It is Friday Eve, folks. That's right. It's Thursday evening. We are live right now on KLRNradio.com. I am Rick Robinson. You are listening to Jen and Rick. I'm one half of the crew, and of course, I've already given you my name. The other half of the crew is Jen Homestead. She's with me tonight. Sorry, I'm actually watching Alyssa Milano have a meltdown on Twitter over the fact that my state just passed concealed carry. Constitutional carry, because we've had concealed carry for forever. Now, the governor hasn't signed it yet, but it hasn't stopped all the gun nut lefties from completely flipping out, and I'm just sitting here. Now that my teeth don't hurt, I'm eating popcorn and enjoying the action. It's been fun.
It's funny you say popcorn, because I legitimately was eating popcorn, not like just before the show with my son watching a movie. But yeah, now I have to go look. I always love it when kind of irrelevant actresses have major meltdowns. So she's become such a kind of recognized thing on Twitter and such an activist, I guess. But it seems like everything she tries to promote and campaign for dies. Yeah.
Yes, which is not a bad thing, by the way, because we're on the opposite side of most 99.999% of our arguments. So the fact that everything she promotes dies in a fire, I'm okay with that. I'm just saying.
Yes, as am I. I just find it kind of funny, and it's like, you would think she would at least, because she still is a very attractive woman, and she, you would just think that there would be, some really shallow people that would totally just do whatever she says, because that's kind of what seems to happen with, there are the cultists in politics, and then there are the cultists in entertainment, and what entertainment has tried, and Hollywood has tried to kind of manipulate the last 10 years especially, and very, very much so the last 5 years, is manipulate those entertainment audiences and make them political and try to encourage them to vote the way that they want them to politically, and then, bestow adoration on them as such fantastic fans and amazing human beings for voting the way that they think everything should go. So it is kind of amazing that someone like her is not able to persuade more to take up her cause. Kind of funny.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I think you're only rubbing in the fact that she's still kind of attractive because I had a crush on her when I was a teenager.
Everybody did.
I'm kind of
if you didn't have a crush on her, you wanted to be her. I mean, that's just the way it was.
She was like my official first Hollywood crush, because my dad's always been one of those weird guys. Like when I was a kid, he'd be watching TV and be like, "Hey, guess what?" Some hot actress would come on and be like, "That's my girlfriend." Going all the way back to like Heather Locklear when she was on the old show with Lee Majors, The Fall Guy. Anytime we watched that, he'd be like, "That's my girlfriend." And so the first person I ever kind of felt that kind of a connection to was Alyssa Milano, and turns out she's bat crap crazy.
She is, but she was really great as a teenager on Who's the Boss.
This is true.
She was so cute. Who would not love her? Of course.
I'm just not sure. Was it the lack of Tony Danza in her life at a later time that made her crazy, or was it her exposure of Tony Danza during the show that eventually made her crazy? That's
a great question. I love Tony Danza, so I have to pretend that it had nothing to do with him. It wasn't his fault at all. But I think it's that many years in that lifestyle and that bubble and those groups and that circle.
I mean, look. Well, I mean, legitimately, Hollywood types go nuts. I mean, look at the chick from Smallville.
Which one? Oh, yeah. Wasn't she involved in that?
Yeah, Allison Mack. She was the nerdy reporter, kind of.
What's her name on the show? Like Chloe or something?
Yeah, it was Chloe.
Wow, I dug way back into my high school brain for that.
Shut up. Just shut up. That was my I'm not even in college anymore brain, so you can just shut up now.
Oh, that's funny.
Stupid transitional millennials. I'm just playing. All right, so... See, I knew I'd get a rise out of you because you hate being called the M-word. All right, so anyway. So, I mean, just look at all the crazy that comes out of Hollywood. I mean, look at the Scientology crap that's come out of Hollywood. Look at all the sex cults that come out of Hollywood. Harvey Weinstein, who basically looks like real-life Jabba the Hutt, I mean, ew. Look at, just Hollywood is nuts. And
who, by the way, another complete nut job, Ashley Judd, is now suing Harvey. It's been announced today.
The one that I find interesting, and it's a bit off topic, but kind of the same thing, is Tom Brokaw's kind of a celebrity at this point for being a moron. Apparently there are people that are now basically lumping him in with Cosby-style allegations. Dude's like 90-something years old now, and people are like, oh my God, he molested me when I was blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, they're old. Put them on an ankle monitor, cut off their prescription to Viagra, save everybody some money.
Yeah, I was going to say, my thing is, just save the time and money and trouble. I mean, I do think that, some of these people that have been victims of some of this, and some of the stories are horrific. They really are. It's not just they made a pass at them or they grabbed their boobs or something like that. I mean, there's some really, offensive, raunchy stories out there of what some of these men did to these women. And and I think that for the most part, some of the reason that so many people have kept quiet too was not just because of the power thing. And this is the mentality with all victims. Some of it is the shame, and it's the guilt, and it's embarrassment, and it's feeling of, having low self-worth. And it stems from kind of a PTSD that stems from this abuse. And so I would think that a lot of these women, though, that they want to stand up and point their finger at him, and they want him to in some way pay for what he did or any of these men have done, and see them be, however, can legally be justly punished at this point in time. I'm not sure that they all want to go sit in a courtroom and have every single detail dragged out and recorded and put into the system and splashed across the front page of the New York Times. So you would think that they would kind of be on board with that too. But I don't know. They may be just fine with risking all of that and finally able to grasp it enough to where they are okay with putting it out there if it means that some sort of maximum penalty comes to these sickos.
So the thing that surprised me, because when the Cosby story broke, my wife, who doesn't really delve into the realm of politics and most of the time tells me to just go into my studio and watch my news stories to prep because she doesn't give a damn and especially doesn't like hearing Trump's voice. But when the Cosby story broke, that was the one thing that she was fairly opinionated about. And I have to admit, her responses kind of surprised me. Like, there was the one lady who said that she had went over there at one point and he had given her pills that he said would help with her migraine, and she woke up and he was penetrating her. But then she's like, and then I went back a couple weeks later because I had to because it was my job. And my wife's like, F that. The dude slips you a Mickey and you go back. You're looking for something. And I'm like, I never in a million years expected to hear you say something like that. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like,
I go back and forth on that kind of thing. It's such a weird thing once you've been victimized and the psychology of it and the way that it really does for some people truly screw them up, and they start to. Well, it's like women that stay with husbands that abuse them. I mean, every single one of those women is not asking for it, But at the same time, it's really frustrating. This is the same kind of like crossover of feelings that I get sometimes. I know it's so incredibly hard and they're definitely not asking for it. And they are the victim and all of that. But then on the other side, it's like, but he's going to do it again. But that this is not the last time. And he did it before. He did this and it's getting worse. Or there's been an apology. So I think that it's just such a mess and it's so complicated and it's so hard to say like, well, I mean, I know when Cosby stuff first came out, like I initially didn't believe it because it was so long before, and they'd taken so long to come out. And that didn't mean that it necessarily wasn't untrue. It just seemed a little, I don't know. It just seemed like there was something to be gained there by coming forward. And then when it was like, 2 more and 5 more and 8 more and 20 more, that's when it was like, okay. And some of them had actual like, at least a semblance of evidence to back it up. That was when it was like, okay, good gravy, this guy is awful, and that really sucks because he was like best TV dad ever, and
he was like America's dad, dude. I remember writing.
Yes.
I remember writing an opinion piece that wound up going over to American Action News back when this story first broke, and I remember because I was part of a broken home when I was growing up, and I did not have the best examples of parents because my mom was really, really young when my parents got pregnant. They did it on purpose because they wanted to get married. My dad, who I love dearly, this day and age would have been considered a child predator because he was 20, she was 15. But they were in love with each other, and they got their parents to sign off on them getting married because they got pregnant on purpose with me. So then I grew up watching my parents try to kill each other and then basically being told, don't worry, it's not your fault, we just can't get along anymore. And I'm like, but if I wasn't here, y'all would have never gotten married. So it caused all kinds of deep-seated issues for me for a very long time. It's one of the reasons why I was pretty shy and withdrawn for a long time, and it's why I've always tended to gravitate towards fields where I could help people because it's the way I cope. But at the same time, while I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional home, my mom, because she had a child really, really young, spent most of her 20s and 30s trying to relive her teenage years. And then before my parents divorced, they had another child, my younger brother. We are 8 years apart. I actually was my brother's babysitter for most of my teenage years because my mom was off reliving the teenage years that she never got to have. And then my dad, who has come a long way thanks to becoming involved in church and finding out more about who he was. And, I mean, everybody changes as they get older, so my dad's basically mellowed with age. So, I mean, we're really close now. The funny thing is my mom and I were always close when I was a kid. Now she's the one that's gone completely nuts, and nobody can stand to be around her. So, I mean, I've never really had stable parents. It's like one goes off the rails, the other one finds their way back on track. So, for me, growing up, Cosby was dad because that was how I learned how fathers should behave because I had no frame of reference. So to watch the person that I idolized as a child who kind of gave me the idea of, if I have kids, this is how I'm going to treat my kids because I don't want to treat my kids the way I got treated, even if there are legitimate reasons why it happened because my parents were young and stupid. But for me, watching my childhood dad basically get raked over the coals the first time this happened, it was heart-wrenching. And now that it's happened again, I'm just like, dude, he's in his, what is he? He's either in his 80s or he's almost 80. Why are we about to put a nearly 80-year-old or almost 80-year-old man in prison? I understand what he did. I understand that it's terrible, but he's got no life left. Save the taxpayers some money, put him on an ankle bracelet, and make sure he can't get Viagra, because then he ain't going to be able to do nothing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't even know, what any kind of precedent is for stuff like that. I know that there are lots of states that do different kind of releases for people when they are elderly and sick, and it's usually around the time when they're in their 80s. But a lot of places don't. They just let them go right there in the system. But yeah, it was so sad because the writers were so good on the Cosby Show, and they made him seem, they wrote those roles for these parents so well that it was just such a great example. And then in addition to that, like you're talking about him being America's dad, well, it was also because of the Jell-O commercials and because of some of the other work that he did, including like Kids Say the Darndest Things. That was just hysterical. He would get these kids to just say the prompts he would come up with, and then the way he would improv and ad-lib with them, it is still one of the most hilarious shows I've ever seen. So it's just so sad. But, I can't, when I have to think about, if he wasn't if he wasn't so charming and charismatic, and if he hadn't played such a wonderful role as Dr. Huxtable on TV, and if he wasn't at least a little bit good looking, would we look at him more like Harvey Weinstein and be like, screw him? And I just mean people in general, not you and me. Would people in general be less willing to kind of, defend him for as long as a lot of us did, and all of that, if we just looked at what his actions were instead of all these other things that had created, favor for us towards him?
Well, I mean, I would honestly like to say that I think you're wrong, but I think you're right on a lot of points. I mean, and that's one of the dangerous things when it comes to Hollywood, because we spend so much time with these people on our TVs that we start to assume that we know who they are because of the characters that they play. And the same thing can be said of, going back to Chloe from Smallville. She seemed like an everyday all-American girl next door based on the character that she was playing, but apparently she has, some issues just like everybody else, and there may or may not have been somebody that kind of exploited those issues and got her involved in some things that she probably shouldn't have been involved in. But I mean, that's part of the problem. That's one of the reasons why I was trying to wake up the cult of personality when it came to Trump, because I mean, look, I like a lot of the things that have happened since he's become president as far as what's going on with the economy and the few things that he's managed to get right. But we can't deny the fact that for 8 years, we yelled about Obama's cult of personality, and then we had a chance to do something different, and yet then we elected the same version, or slightly different version of a cult of personality. That doesn't make any sense to me, to scream about one side doing something and then we turn around and do the exact same thing. But that's all politics is anymore. I mean, I was talking about this with Chad Alexander the other day. If we look back at history, at some of the things that presidents like Lincoln had done to get things done when he was president, the different cabinet positions that he'd offered for people that would help him get things done, the different things that was part and parcel back then. You voted a certain way and you got a favor back in return. Those people would be impeached by today's standards because of the things that they did to get things done back in the day. Because that's how much politics have changed. We have completely criminalized politics in America. You can't do anything that used to be politically acceptable or expedient without it basically being considered criminal anymore. And what concerns me about that is, as we continue to criminalize politics more and more and more, look at the people that are gravitating towards politics.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, there was another thing that was, I can't even remember who posted it the other day, but typically we all have a very unfavorable view of Congress, but kind of in the same vein about like, look who's going to gravitate towards this if something doesn't change. Well, Congress has had, the House of Representatives has had a stagnant wage. It hasn't increased in almost 10 years. 10 years is a long time in a large city like Washington, D.C., in which absolutely, wages have changed in every other job, and cost of living has increased. There's been, so cost of living has definitely gone up in Washington, D.C. in the last decade, yet House of Representatives salaries have not changed in that decade. And while at first it's like really like, whatever, I can't feel sorry for you. It's also, once I started reading about it, it's like, man, because the whole reason was that they're talking about there is a Democrat that is writing a bill banning them from sleeping in their offices. Because that's what America needs to focus on, by the way, is whether our representative is crashing in his office on an uncomfortable cot because it's too dang expensive to live in D.C. and maintain residence and a family in their home state. And that's most of what it is. Even Paul Ryan has done it from time to time, because what they all kind of do is they try to roommate up with each other and maybe get an apartment if they can find something cheap enough to where they're not all having to pay $3,000 each a month to maintain a residence in D.C., while still maintaining a home and usually a wife and children or a husband and children back in their home state, which they also have to maintain in order to be in Congress. So they can't just move to D.C. and be done with it. They have to maintain residency in their state as well, which is what makes it really difficult. And they're getting paid $174,000 to do that. And that sounds like a whole lot of money, but when you're talking about maintaining two different households basically in two different states, and you're only getting paid for travel, or you're only able to expense travel when you are having approved travels back to your home state, and not just because you go to your kid's baseball game or whatever, that can't be expensed, then that money goes really, really quickly. And I know a lot of people in some of these, where these people are coming from, they're living in the state capitals of their states. So also usually really expensive cities compared to maybe the rest of their state. So I was reading this, and my first thought is just like, oh, whatever, you make $174,000. But then it's like, wait a second though, like $174,000 doesn't go a long way in New York. It doesn't go a long way in DC. It doesn't go a long way. It sounds like it does, but I mean, when you're talking about the kind of lifestyle they maintain, it doesn't. And then so they're getting, now these other congressmen want to punish them. They think it's gross. They think it's unethical. They think that they should have to be hit. They think that it's a violation of tax code for them to crash in their offices for the several months that they're there, and then they leave and go back, and then they're back there. They want to punish them for that. And a lot of these guys, are just doing it so that they can still afford, what's best for their family. And because they work all the damn time anyway, so they're never in their apartments. But one of the guys said, he goes, from where I'm, from maintaining residency in Albany and being here, he's like, I just simply can't afford it. And I did have a roommate and had an apartment for a while. But my roommate got booted out of office, and I couldn't find anyone else to fill the spot. So I had to give up the apartment because I couldn't pay $3,800 on my own. And so I just found it really interesting because he said, I don't think that this is what the founders would want, because if we start banning things like overnights in your office, or we're not helping, or something doesn't change in the city of Washington to where there is just more affordable housing for something like that, and you don't have to live 2 hours away and commute, then this is not what the founders would want, because you're only going to have millionaires. You're only going to have wealthy people in Congress. And that's kind of what's already happened with the senators, right? It's mostly pretty wealthy people that become senators, but the House of Representatives is still a different story. There are still a lot of people that can get into politics and make it to Washington as a representative that do not come from some eccentric or some crazy political background with or business background with a lot of wealth or some sort of inheritance. So he was saying that, we're already running people off from good people that could make a real difference that aren't the same old politicians. We're already running them off because of all sorts of things. And you add to it something like this, like, can't we use our time better? But I think it's true. I don't think all of the way that politics has evolved now is so far from what the founders saw, where there were a lot of farmers and a lot of people that were very blue collar that were in there and able to help or able to be a part of government. And that's just kind of become less and less the case. So you're going to have the Donald Trumps of the world and the Obamas of the world.
So see, what I'm really starting to wonder, based on, the fact that we have these dual residency situations and we have all these different problems and we have the cost of the upkeep of the buildings and everything else, with technology the way it is today, do we really have to have them in D.C.? I mean, is that even necessary? Could we not save the taxpayers money, save them money, so whatever paycheck they are getting while they're in office could stretch further by using technology for them to caucus instead of having to always be in the same place at the same time? Now, I'm not saying to never go there, but let's not forget, when we start talking about the founding fathers, they didn't have paychecks when they were part of Congress when things were originally founded. They got a per diem during travel, and they made a few bucks here and there while they were actually in office. But most of the time, they only spent a couple of weeks here and there in D.C. The rest of the time, they were home with their constituents doing their jobs from there. So I think in some ways we need to get back to that, because D.C. has become a bubble. and not in a good way. I mean, I've seen completely honorable people that have spent time in D.C. that have come out, and I don't recognize them anymore. John McCain being one of them. I was barely alive when John McCain went to D.C., but I've seen some of the original footage of when he got sworn in and the things that he had done throughout his career, and it was like, I mean, not to go nerdy, but it was like watching the Chancellor from Star Wars turn into Emperor Palpatine. And I know that's a bit of a stretch because it's not exactly the same thing, but it's just there's a complete difference between who he was when he got there versus who he is now. And I'm not saying that because of the cancer, because that was apparent before we ever knew he had cancer.
But I think it's because I think some of it, though, is because of naivete. So they go in there gung-ho. They can change the world. They've got all these ideas. They're not going to back down. They've got their principles. And then they get in there, and it's a much more intricate and complicated machine. I mean, it just is. And there's so many working parts, and there's so many things, and you don't want to compromise, but you have to. And then you don't want to give in to this, but you have to. You don't want to trade favors for that, but you have to. And it's kind of the same as you see people who come in really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed straight out of business school, you know, ready to make their mark on that corporate world. And then by the time that they, you know, reach some of the top ranks, they're like extremely cynical, very good businessmen, but extremely cynical, you know, and maybe just a shell of what you once saw in their kind of liveliness and enthusiasm. So, I mean, unfortunately, with the government as big as it has grown, I don't see how that's going to stop being the case or stop being necessary. And you're still going to have people they're going to have to choose which things they fight for more. You know, Ted Cruz has had to make some hard choices about what he will go along with in order to stand for these other things. You know, there are people like that in Congress that are having to do that. Rand Paul has done the same thing. So I think it's good I do think, though, that we have to keep having those people that are willing to, even though they do have to give in some and they do have to change some. And it does piss us off some because we're like, why did you vote on this like this? Or why did you do that like that? And we don't kind of realize some of the other stuff that's happening that's maybe part of the reason for that, but that are still willing to sometimes stand up in the face of everybody and stand up for what is right and for what they were voted into office for. And as long as we keep getting some of those people in, you know, maybe we can eventually finally change the system a little bit. And but it has to start with shrinking the government. And I don't know how on earth we can possibly make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the issue. But that's part of the reason why I started doing this, is to start floating crazy ideas. Like, you know, finding ways to actually shrink the government. Because everybody says they want to do it till they're in office, and then they don't do it. I don't see any way. I mean, and, you know, I hadn't really thought about the expenses in D.C. because, you know, when my wife and I together make half of that a year here, and they're making double that, but they're there, I don't really think about how much more everything costs in DC, even though I've been there a few times for conventions and everything else. I mean, when you're dropping $20 for a hamburger, there's a problem. And I've done that. I mean, granted, it was in one of the restaurants at the hotel, but I was starving and I didn't have a chance to leave. I had like 30 minutes to eat before I had to be back to do an interview. For a burger, fries, and a drink, I paid $19.79.
Right. Right. Well, and think about it too, though. Think about it just not your expenses while you're there in DC. Think about how they might have 3 kids at home, one of which is a football player, one of which is a ballerina, and one of which, you know, is on track to go to Princeton or something. And you're having to pay for all of that too. So, you know, that's where, and all the expenses at home and the groceries and the car bills and the insurance and all of those things, and you're basically having to like double pay, but because of that, and that's what's like yowzas, that's really not all that much money. Not that I am really in favor of giving them more, but I just think that the point of how this kind of thing can run the good people out or turn the good kind of people away, the kind of people that we need to have in politics, even if it's just a few of them that we need to have in there fighting the good fight. More and more of them are going to say, nah. If it means I have to sleep, on my floor in my office for 6 months out of the year, no, thank you. And even worse, if it means that my fellow congressmen are going to try to ban me from doing so and force me to go into debt in order to keep an apartment, then nah, I'm not going to do it. And so you're only going to get, the more well-off people. And I think that that's a very bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. And honestly, you brought something to my attention. I wasn't even aware that was going on. But then again, it's first week of the month, so we have been slammed at the day job, and I've been inundated with a million other things that have been going on. Like the fact that it's actually my dad's birthday. So before I forget, happy birthday, Dad. I know you're listening.
Yay, happy birthday.
He's officially retired and not real happy about it, but he's officially retired. All right, so actually we are long, so we need to take a break real quick. We'll make it a short one. We'll be back in about 3. Stay tuned.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
All right, folks, welcome back. Well, believe it or not, thanks to the late break, we've got about 20-ish minutes left. And then, of course, as soon as we are done here, I'll be live on America Off the Rails. We actually have managed to break Orty off of the donkey farm. We got him an H1 B visa, and we've snuck him in from Tijuana. So he's going to be spending the hour with us until they revoke his visa. But yeah, so make sure if you want to hang out for that, you can. If not, you can always check out the podcast later. But we've been kind of all over the map tonight. We've been talking about, again, Jen brought something to my attention that I wasn't even aware was going on, which was apparently some infighting with Congress about folks sleeping in their offices, and people are kind of mad about it and think it's not fair and not cool, and they should have to pay for an apartment too. And
so they're going to introduce a bill and waste taxpayer time over it.
Yeah, I know. I guess that's the part that kind of flabbergasts me about all of it. Look, even if this is an issue, is this really what you guys should be focusing on right now?
Not only that, but can't it be held internally? Like, can't it be handled internally and not have to go through a freaking bill? I mean, it's just so silly to me.
I mean, it seems to me they should have the policy, or they should have the ability to regulate some form of policy that doesn't actually have to make it a criminal proceeding of some kind.
But I think that's the problem. I think that I think that the policy has been that most of, or whoever decides that, whoever oversees this kind of thing, whoever oversees the congressional offices has said they don't care. You know, that this is okay as long as, you know, X, Y, and Z happens, then whatever. If there is a specific problem, we'll handle it. So I think that's part of it, is that they can't, the policy as it stands allows for this, and they can't stand that. So they want to make it change by introducing a bill and codifying it in law.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean,
just so dumb.
The whole thing is, you know, they have all of these things they should be doing, and they're infighting about who's sleeping in their offices or not. I don't know. I mean, but again, this is what happens when you let government completely outgrow its usefulness. I swear to God, I guarantee you, the founding fathers right now are looking down at us going, what the hell have you done to what we gave you?
Like, why?
What is the matter with you people? What have you done? We gave you the perfect form of government, and you have crapped all over it. You've basically turned capitalism into a corptocracy. There's really no freedom anymore. There's a guise of freedom, but you have a government that basically tells you... I mean, when I have to put a seatbelt on and I'm an adult, that's not freedom. I'm sorry. And this is coming from somebody that's worked traffic accidents before. But this is the thing that we don't tell you from somebody that's worked traffic accidents before. Look at all the police officers that don't wear seatbelts. You know why? Because it's really hard to wear a seatbelt when you got 50 pounds of gear on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, I get it. If I have children in the car, then there should be car seats, there should be seatbelts, there should be whatever those kids have to have. But once I am legally an adult, I should have the right to choose whether or not I put a seatbelt on or whether I wear a helmet. And if you don't like that, I don't care. That's not your choice. That's part of what I'm talking about here, because we have bastardized this whole thing. We have the illusion of freedom because we have the ability to get up and go to work, and we can, if we get lucky enough, find a way to make a lot of money or basically live whatever you consider the American dream. I mean, I know, almost said a bad word, I know people that living under an overpass and being able to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. That's their version of the American dream. They don't do it because they don't know any other way to be. They don't like the responsibility of having to deal with corporate America and everything else, and to them, life is easier if they're digging in dumpsters and living under an overpass. But that's their choice, is it not? I mean, that's part of my issue with everything that we talk about on a daily basis anymore, because it's the government deciding how you and I need to live. That is a problem for me. That is a huge problem for me, because we're seeing what's happening in other countries that have taken that to the ultimate extremes, say Great Britain, where their citizenry is now subject to the whim of doctors and judges as to whether or not they get to survive, because there's now
my gosh, where you can be arrested for a tweet.
I know, right? So I mean, yeah, is it as bad here as it could be? No, but we're headed in that direction, and that again is part of what I've been trying to wake people up to, is we have to decide at the end of the day what's more important. Personally, I will do my best to always side for freedom. That's why, even though I have spent time behind a badge wearing a uniform, when everybody starts freaking out about the constitutional carry thing, I'm like, look, this is not going to be nearly the big deal that you think it is, because in Oklahoma, most everybody, unless you've transplanted from another state, which there are unfortunately a few of those, thank you, California, unless you've transplanted from another state, you've most likely either been exposed to guns or grown up around guns or probably already know how to use guns. Most everybody that's going to take the time to carry one is going to make sure they're not going to shoot their own finger off. And if they do, you know what? So what? Maybe there's self-inflicted gunshot wounds that rise for a while when we pass constitutional carry. So,
well, what I don't understand is everybody acts like this means that everyone's going to walk around with a freaking, rifle, just thrown over their shoulder no matter where they go, and that they're going to be allowed to take it into any single business that they want to, and that they're going to be shooting off in the streets up to the sky. I mean, it's so ridiculous how they just get so emotionally unhinged over this kind of thing. Like, go spend time in a state with open carry. Go spend time in a state with constitutional carry. And I can pretty much guarantee you that you will not, unless you come from somewhere where you've never seen a gun on a hip, then you're not going to see much different from what you normally do. You might be a little bit like, oh, I did notice that truck had a rifle rack. Or you might see that one person, if you're in a really rural area, that might actually, kind of be carrying something a little bit less concealed or whatever than what most people do. But you would, it's not, like I said, it's not like every single person is getting out of their car and slinging 2 rifles over their backs and walking on, going about their way. Just cut the theatrics.
Every person might not be, but I am. No, I'm just playing. I really don't get it. I don't understand the hysteria or the hyperbole about, I mean, we are a sovereign state. If we decide we want to give people the right to carry on a constitutional basis, that's our decision. California, and especially Alyssa Milano, can stay the hell out of it for all I care. If it becomes an issue, I'm sure we will deal with it. But we had the same people when we passed concealed carry years ago that were screaming that the sky was falling and everybody was going to die and we were going to turn into the Old West and there were going to be shootouts in the streets and yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. It hasn't happened. The people that are terrified that we're going to start seeing guns on every hip are the people that grew up watching things like Gunsmoke, and they're like, oh my God, we're going back to the Wild Wild West. I got news for you folks. The Wild Wild West wasn't the Wild Wild West. It wasn't anything like it's been portrayed on TV.
Okay, there are 14 states currently before Oklahoma passing this, and I'm not counting it because it hasn't been signed. Like you said, it hasn't been signed by the governor yet. There are 14 states that have constitutional carry. A couple of them have a few limitations on them in a very small degree. But Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Idaho, which is limited to residents only, not people traveling, Kansas, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, North Dakota, also residents only, Vermont, West Virginia, Wyoming, residents only, and Montana, where you can have there's permitless concealed carry and constitutional carry outside of the city limits. So permitless concealed carry within the city limits and constitutional carry outside of city limits. So 14 states. And of those states, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Idaho, Kansas, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Vermont, West Virginia, Wyoming, Montana. Do any of those sound like the states that we hear really often whenever there's talks about high crime? Nope. And about, reckless endangerment of the people through shooting? I mean, I don't think that I literally haven't heard of anything from most of these places ever about it being even remotely dangerous.
Yeah, no, you haven't.
And they have constitutional carry. So, I mean, just this idea that, this is going to make people running through the streets with guns willy-nilly just means that these people have no fundamental understanding of guns or really cultures that appreciate and teach the worth of being armed.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, for all the people that are like, oh my God, everybody in Oklahoma is going to die because of constitutional carry. How many people were shot in Chicago last weekend? Just saying.
Right, and it's not even just that. I mean, it's Baltimore. It's it's DC, even with the limits that they have. It's New York City. It's Philadelphia. It's Detroit. It's Atlanta. It's all of these. And some of that is just big cities, and some of it is what has been created there and how things have gone too far because of policies and usually democratic regimes, unfortunately, that have lasted well over 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want, because, my state's a bit of a mess right now. We're trying to get things worked back out again. But take a look at everywhere there's been democratic rule for a long period, like, say, Detroit, Michigan, and tell me what you see. Michigan in general, for the most part. Tell me what you see. Sorry, Al. I don't mean to throw your whole state under the bus, but, you guys are getting a little weird. They have, like, Dearbornistan now. It's kind of creepy. I saw another video, again, of, like, I don't know, we don't really have time to go into it, but it was really kind of scary. I actually have somebody who I keep trying to get onto the show who's actually part of Understanding the Threat, John Guandolo, who actually had somebody who went undercover inside CARE and actually is now being sued by them because he wrote a book about his experiences and basically outlines how they're tied to Hamas and a bunch of other things that nobody ever really wants to talk about. But there's all kinds of headway being made for Islam in places like Michigan, and it's actually going on in a few other places. And we've already seen what happens in places like London and Sweden and all these other places where they've just been able to come over however they want, whenever they want. And that's honestly, at the end of the day, it's one of the reasons why, people are going to hate me for saying this. I don't really care. It's one of the reasons why I'm glad that we have a Second Amendment, because it's going to be that's going to be the last thing that protects us from the crazy. Because when the rest of the government fails, because at some point it's going to, we're still going to be able to protect ourselves as long as we don't allow them to take all of our guns away and melt them down and turn them into whatever the liberals want to turn them into. Just saying.
I mean, yeah. Hey, I was also going to say, I think people would be horrified to know that almost twice as many as there are constitutional carry states, there are open carry states, at least in some form. So you're talking about, over half of the United States allows open, some form of open or constitutional carry, and it's mostly areas that do not see a whole lot of gun crime.
Well, that's like
saying.
Well, that's like that town we talked about a couple months ago that I can't think of the name of right now. That has a law in the books that says everybody has to have a functional firearm in their house. They don't even enforce that law, but the fact that everybody knows that law exists, nobody breaks into any houses there because you don't know who's gonna have a gun. They had like one. I think if I remember reading right, I think they had like one murder in 6 years.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who's got a gun and who doesn't. I mean, and that's the beauty of concealed carry. I mean, honestly, I've never really been a huge fan of open carry, especially if you're using it as a defensive measure, because if your plan is to make sure that you can deal with people that may or may not surprise you with a weapon, you having yours out and visible when you're not in uniform is not a good plan, because they're going to aim at you first, most likely. But it's another reason why I am a huge fan of constitutional carry and always have been. The funny thing is about my state, we always seem to do everything in increments. So we started with concealed carry, then we went to open carry, and now we're trying to pass constitutional carry. The same thing is now going on with marijuana. They've now passed a study to allow Oklahoma to grow hemp again, because we, at one point, had the largest hemp crop in the country before the whole polyester fad took off and the clothing manufacturers decided that hemp was a bad thing. And then we've got medical marijuana on the ballot here in a few months, which will likely pass, because at this point I don't even know very many conservatives in my state that aren't like, look, it's time. And personally, after having some family experiences where I've seen people that have gotten hooked on the synthetic crap that is technically not illegal till they ban it, and then they change another ingredient and then it becomes legal again until they ban it, with the synthetic, as bad as it is and as addictive as it is, at this point, it's just time. I mean, because there's too many people that are going to find a way to get themselves high because that's what they want to do. Again, we need to stop legislating and regulating morality. It's one of the things that I've been saying for a long time. It's one of the reasons why, even though I don't want to know what you do in your bedroom and with whom, as long as you're not hurting yourself, I really don't care. As long as you don't make me do something that is against my religion, I really don't care what you do. As long as you're not hurting yourself or somebody else, I really don't care. And honestly, if you're hurting yourself, I really don't care either. As long as you're not hurting somebody else. If you are, as an adult, say, I want to do something that's going to hurt me, that's your own stupidity, because I don't like pain. I don't know about you, but I don't. Anyway, sorry, kind of all over the place there at the end, but we are just about out of time, I guess. So, anything else you want to say on the way out?
Oh, I don't think there's really anything I can think of. It's kind of a more entertainment news day today.
Much. Well, I mean, for me, that's pretty much every day, but,
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much, there are some other kind of goofy things going on, and I think that, of course, this Trump thing is going to continue to go on, and we're going to continue to hear about how this Iran deal was as utterly preposterous as we believed it to be, and what a bunch of freaking liars the entire Obama administration was, and how they're all trying to backtrack and, well, actually everything. But yeah, I'm just kind of gonna stay tuned. What?
I said Barack Obama's basically trying to pull a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Well, you see what had happened was.
Right. And I mean, Netanyahu just, whoo! His people just nailed it down, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think the funniest thing for me is watching Lurch try to walk that back. I'm just like, dude, just stop. Just stop.
I noticed that the day that it first dropped, Ben Rhodes was conveniently absent on Twitter. I was like, Ben Rhodes, where are you? Where are you, Ben? Where are you? For people that don't know, he was like the greatest defender of that freaking deal, and was involved in the creation of it. So, anyways, he's been lecturing everybody, especially a lot of conservative blue checks on Twitter for the last year and a half, just almost entirely defending that deal on a daily basis. And he just kind of went AWOL that day when Netanyahu's intelligence report dropped.
Yeah, kind of funny how that happens. All right, well, we're going to have to get out of here because I have Orty coming up here in just about 60 seconds, so I got to get set up with him. Of course, if you like what we're doing here, feel free to follow along with the station's Twitter account at KLRN Radio. You can also follow along with me at Radios Rick, or shoot me an email at rick@klrnradio.com.
Okie doke. I'm Jay Homestead on Twitter and JR Homestead on Facebook, and check out misfitspolitics.com. And yeah, I'll catch everybody later.
Misfit Mischief tomorrow night. Yeah.
Misfit Mischief is tomorrow night. Yes, hopefully technology cooperates.
We'll see. Y'all have been breaking it lately, but that's usually a good sign. Take care, folks. We'll see you tomorrow night. Or I will anyway, for Robinson and Wright. And I'll be back with you here in just a minute for America Off the Rails. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. For those of you staying up late, see you in a second. For those of you who won't be back till tomorrow, you suck, but check out the podcast. No, I'm just playing. Bye, guys.